Welcome to my podcast, Out of Town. My name is Tova, and I cannot wait to share the stories and the fascinating conversations I get to have with the most amazing people I come across living out of town. So let's go there. Whipped open a Gemara, and you gave one of the most beautiful divrei Torah I've ever heard from a non-Jew at my table.
She's crying. She says, "You're gonna have such a closer connection to God than I could ever hope for." The fact that every shul I walk into tries to offer me an aliyah, I think
You're like, it's time, Rabbi. Number one, I just want to say a huge thank you to Gavin for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So thank you for joining us, where I get to share a bit of my out-of-town incredible experience of meeting people, sharing their inspiring stories.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also, from out of town. I only recently moved to Brighton about 2 months ago. But before that, I've been in New Hampshire for, I'm 24. I've been there for the past 23 years. So,
where was the 1 year?
I was born in Delaware, and we moved up to New Hampshire when I was young. So, my whole time has been in New Hampshire, really. And, it's great up there. You got some amazing views. You've got some amazing lakes. Adam Sandler and people like him.
Really?
You have a bunch of houses up there. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I played basketball with him once.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, he dresses like he's always playing basketball.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. No, he's got a house over. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's near the Meredith docks. Anybody who knows that, and they used to have this huge public basketball court. And everybody in the area would play there. And every now and again, Adam Sandler would show up and dominate because he's actually incredibly good.
That's great. So when you moved to Boston, do you feel like now you're living the city life?
Yeah, I mean, technically I'm in the suburbs, but I grew up in a town of 700 people. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm in the big city.
Oh, yeah. And then coming from New York, my experience is like slowing it down and making it smaller, which is always funny.
Yeah.
When you meet people coming from the other direction.
I mean, just the fact that I could walk to the grocery store, it was a 40-minute drive back in New Hampshire. So like, it's a big difference.
Oh, that's a totally different level. Wow. So Gavin, I got to meet you maybe a few months ago, and I got to hear a bit of your story then. And I'm so grateful that we've had you at our Shabbos table.
Yeah.
I will say that last time you came, you whipped open a Gemara and you gave one of the most beautiful divrei Torah I've ever heard from a non-Jew at my table. And in general, it was very inspiring. The way you speak, the way you think is like incredible. But also, in addition to that, you have a beautiful journey that so many people are inspired by. So I would love to hear a bit about that. If you're...
Yeah. So for a little bit of context, I'm in the conversion process. I'm not quite done. And so in New Hampshire, there's very few Jews, at least not during the summer. There's a big Satmar community up in the White Mountains. But other than that, you don't really hear about Jews outside of history class, really. You learn about World War II, and that's really the only time that it's even brought up.
Is it safe to say that we're not Jewish community members where you lived?
It turns out later I learned that one of the local furniture stores was owned by a Jewish guy. And actually I've gone and given him Michelle now.
That's
since
so
then.
Nice.
But I didn't know at the time.
Right.
It just wasn't something that ever came up.
Yeah.
But the only time outside of history class that really Jews were ever mentioned was, every Xmas, my grandmother would always tell this one story. I forget what year it happened. Mid-90s. She was working at a factory called the Malden Mills, and my grandfather was a truck driver, and he had gotten into an accident. Not while he was driving his truck, but he got into a car accident. He got pretty severely injured, and he couldn't work, at least for a while. So they were living off just my grandmother's income, and then in early to mid December of like I said, mid 90s, there's a big fire at the Malden Mills. I believe it was like a water boiler exploded or something like that. And like half the factory burns down.
Right.
And so everybody there assumes we're done. We have no money. My grandparents assume we're losing the house, we're losing the car. My uncle, I believe, was 17. My mother, I think, was 15. And they're like, we've got 2 kids in the house. What are we supposed to do? It was a crisis. And of course, it's right there in the holiday season. Everybody's already strapped for cash. So it was a major problem. And the owner of the factory was a man by the name of Aaron Mordecai Feuerstein. And he decided that he wasn't going to go down south where labor was cheaper, which was a trend in the 70s and 80s. And he wasn't going to go to China, which was the trend starting in the early 90s. Instead, he said, no, I have a responsibility to these people. These people are my workers. I'm going to rebuild right here in Boston. Yeah. And so amazing, great. Okay, they're not out of a job, but it's going to take a year or whatever to rebuild the factory. And he says, nope, you're not out of work for the next year. I'm going to pay you out of my own pocket. And everybody continued to get their checks until the place was rebuilt. And so that really saved my grandmother and the family there. And it was that kind of got them over the hill until by the time the factory reopened, my grandfather could work again. And it got them through that really, really rough spot. And she used to tell the story every year of that one good Jewish fella, the one guy that she said, oh, that one, he really helped us out and really kind of brought our family through. It's such
a famous story at this point, and to meet someone that actually experienced and benefited from it, is so incredible.
Right. I mean, my mother, I don't think she remembered all the details, but she knew that there was the fire and her mom was going to lose her job, and then the guy stepped up but over time, what you actually remember.
Yeah, but what a Kiddush Hashem.
Oh, absolutely.
And what did your family think about? Did they know about other Jewish people, or was this the one Jewish person they knew, or did they have other kinds of ideas?
My mother, kind of had no opinion on them at all. Like, what do you think of people from Nigeria? Well, I have no opinion. I don't know anybody from Nigeria. Right. My grandparents, generally, not a fan. They're like when of all my family members, my great grandparents, my parents, my aunts and uncles, everybody in my family has been very supportive, except my grandparents.
Interesting.
Yeah, my grandparents, who are the ones that really, really benefit from Aaron Feuerstein, they're very anti.
They're very anti. Are they religious people? Is that what it is?
Not in the slightest. They might have gone to a Catholic mass 40 years ago.
Oh, wow.
In order to get my mother christened, but other than that, they're not very religious. In fact, my great grandmother, I'll talk about her for a second. Her birth name is Dorothea Poliaka, not Polak. She's from Poland. She was born in 1930. She was orphaned during the invasion in 1938. She's not Jewish, but her mother had passed away before the war from a medical condition, and then her father was killed because he was associated with the Communist Party. Mm-hmm. So, but she was still orphaned during the invasion, and she came to the United States. She was adopted actually by a New York Catholic. And so, but she's incredibly, incredibly religious. Like she's a hutch set aside with, gorgeous silverware and plates and cups, just in case the Pope happens to stop by.
Oh, wow.
In the middle of Massachusetts for some reason.
Just randomly.
Just in case. She has this all set aside.
We should learn from that. That is how we should be waiting for Mashiach.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah,
wow.
Bags should be packed.
Yeah.
But she's incredibly, incredibly Catholic. She goes to mass at least 3 times a week, but it's usually 4 or 5.
Wow.
And she's 94 now. And when I told her that I was converting, actually, it's amazing. It's not what I expected. She started to cry. And I assumed that she's saying, oh, your soul, oh, what's going to happen, the afterlife, yada, yada. It was absolutely not that. I completely misunderstood her. I went to like comfort her and say, it's going to be okay, yada, yada. And she's like, no, you don't understand. And she held me by my face, and she's crying, and she says, you're going to have such a closer connection to God than I could ever hope for. I'm so happy that you'll have, such a connection with God. And I was blown away that this was her reaction. Especially, like I said, she's 1930 in Poland. Like, the environment wasn't exactly conducive to being friendly towards Jews. But it was amazing to see her reaction.
I wonder if like the soul knows, like there's not meant to be a barrier between us and God, because we're meant to be like in constant connection. And I feel like there are definitely some religions that kind of place that it's almost like a safety measure. We need something, someone, an essence, something in between.
Right.
Almost because we know it's so powerful. And because we know it's so powerful, it kind of like turns into that. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, my mother, she still calls herself Christian, but if you really, I've sat down with her and dunked down and what exactly do you believe about this and that and whatever.
Yeah.
And she's told me she doesn't actually even believe Yashka ever existed.
Right.
She thinks that it's just useful stories.
Right. Interesting.
She still does believe that there is a God, but she thinks that most of that is useful stories for teaching lessons.
Okay, so then that was all you've really heard about Judaism growing up, and then now you're grown up.
Yes.
Like, what's going on for you?
Well, I mean, when I was 14, I was in a Christian middle school. So I was going to church 6 days a week. The only day we weren't going was Saturday, ironically, because it was 5 days a week as part of the school.
It was school, yeah.
Right. So at 14, I decided I wanted to be a pastor, because we were part of the Baptist group. And so pastors are allowed to marry and whatnot. It's not as crazy as the priest. So I decided, okay, this is what I want to do. So how do I go about doing it? Well, I have to study this. I have to study that. I have to, but seminary didn't start till 16. So I had 2 years to study on my own. I said, okay, what is like the point of a priest? Well, it's to be a mouthpiece for the Messiah, right? That's at least in my head, that's what I said. That's the point, no? So in order to do that, I had to understand, why do we believe he is Yashka? And then why do other people believe he's not?
Oh, wow. You got into the good stuff right away as a teenager.
Well,
okay.
Because that was the point. Like, it's not exactly a public teaching of the Baptists, but it's something that if you hang around, eventually,
like an understanding.
Yeah. That, their understanding is that the reason he hasn't come back is because the Jews don't believe in him.
Oh, interesting. And they're the ones who how do you say it?
Evangelicals. Yeah, they're a subgroup of the evangelicals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And generally,
evangelize was the word.
Right.
Okay.
Generally, that's not a public teaching that the evangelicals will be super forthcoming with, but it is something that they believe.
Right.
Ultimately, that was where I had to say, okay, why do the Jews not believe this, and why do we believe it?
Right.
And so I go through, and Isaiah 53 comes to mind.
I was just thinking that's the one, not 52,
right?
Not 55.
And so I mean, Isaiah 53, if you read in isolation and you read it from a Christian lens, it looks pretty good.
The servant, and it's the one,
right?
You
and
go back,
suffering for our sins, and
right.
like if you read it from a Christian lens and you read it in isolation, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Until you go back one chapter,
and
it's very, very clear that it's talking about Kalal Yeshua.
It says Israel, my servant, right?
Right. Exactly. Israel, my servant. And then it keeps saying, my servant, the servant, yada, yada, yada.
And it's poetically written. So it changes.
Right. And so I go to my pastor and I'm like, hey, listen, this doesn't make much sense to me.
Wow.
And the answer you get is, have faith like a child. Which is, I was going to say, for those who don't know, faith like a child is very different in a Christian and a Jewish worldview. In a Jewish worldview, it's accept it for now and then figure it out later. where in a Christian worldview, it's shut up and stop asking questions.
I love that. Yes.
So faith like a child is a very different thing in these different ideas. So he couldn't answer my question. And so I go to the Reverend, which is it's a pastor that just has a doctorate.
Like level up.
Yeah. They've spent at least I think 8 years in seminary in order to get these degrees, and they have to do all kinds of stuff to get it. So I go to him, basically the same answer. Okay, whatever. There's one argument, but I go to the next, and I go to the next, and I go to the next, and I can't find any reason to believe that Yashka is the Mashiach.
Wow.
And then I say, okay, fine, I'll accept it on blind faith. But now what are the arguments against it? And I'm not going to go through all the details. It falls apart very quickly. Yeah. So that took me from about 14 to 16 to slowly go through all these arguments and try and work it out. And eventually I leave the church. I start calling myself an atheist because that was the only word I knew.
Right.
It was because when you have the triunion God and you knock away one of the three, you can't have a two-legged stool. It falls apart. Then I get very interested in the sciences. I'm still very interested in the sciences. I go to university and I start my degree in physics.
Right.
And hopefully, Yiddish Hashem, I should be getting my master's here in a month or two.
Oh, wow. You're really at the end. That's been quite a bit of time. Wow.
But then in undergrad, I was dating a girl for quite a while, and there was a point where you're going out, you're a college student, you're partying, you're doing whatever. Tomorrow doesn't matter when you're a college student, except for if you have a deadline. That's the only time when tomorrow matters is if there's a deadline tomorrow. And so, whatever, I'm not worried about what's going on until she believes that she was pregnant. And she gets a test and it comes back positive. Yeah. And suddenly tomorrow really matters.
I'm sure you already have Chaya Lew's name and number at the very tippy top of your list for any simcha that you need party planned in the New York area. Having her involved in your simcha means that you are going to elevate the creativity. You are going to feel that sense of relief knowing that a professional is getting the job done with expertise. And I am so grateful that she is the sponsor for today's Out of Town podcast. So let's go there.
And so I apply and get a job at a local factory. It was making good money, actually more money than I make now. I get the job. I fill out the paperwork to drop out of college because I need to be working full time in order to provide for this kid. Like it needs to happen now.
Wow.
And she wisely said, don't file that paperwork until we're 100% sure. So she goes to the doctor. Turns out she wasn't pregnant. Okay, fine.
Wow. Okay.
And then,
and you were ready to drop college and step up.
I had to. I was going to have a kid. What I'm going to just abandon this kid, or I'm just going to, no, I couldn't do that.
And coming from your history, it means something to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Even though I was no longer part of the church, I mean, family was still. You can't just step away from that.
Yeah.
So whatever. Okay, fine. I continue in my college studies. That relationship didn't end up lasting too much longer because she kind of wanted to go back to the carefree college lifestyle, and I just couldn't mentally step back from that.
It's like something was like a flick.
Yeah, a light switch was flicked, and I couldn't just undo it. So in that time of trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life, I looked at my friend group and I said, okay, I have to start life actually today. Who am I taking with me? And there was nobody. There was nobody who was a solid person. It was like people were fun to hang out with. They were fun to play games with or party with or whatever, but they weren't solid. Except for this one guy, Ben Fish. If he ever sees this, I love you, Ben. And he was, up until that point, the only Jew I ever knew.
And this was in university?
This was in university.
Wow.
I was 20. So up until that point, like I said, only Jew I ever knew. If I'd ever even spoken to a Jew, I didn't know it. And so he wore kippah, he wrapped tefillin, and so I was like, hey, listen, you're different than all the other people I know here. You're the only solid person I know. Kind of guy that, like, if you gave him a call at 2 a.m. and said my tire's flat, he's gonna come and help you. And so I just said, listen, let me go to the synagogue with you. Like, let me just see what there's to offer. It was the local University of New Hampshire Chabad house with Rabbi Beryl Sloboditsky.
I love Chabad. Yeah.
Rabbi Beryl Sloboditsky. He has a huge, gorgeous place now, but when I met him, he was in like the back room of a coffee shop. And it was cramped, and but it was nice, you know.
Was it a shul experience, like a real
yeah, it was a shul experience. So I went and I introduced myself and like, hi, how are you, whatever. And people are putting on these bed sheets and they're speaking a language I've never heard before, and I'm. You know, they're rocking back and forth. And like, these people are nut jobs. You know?
He didn't give you a little heads up.
No, I had no idea.
It would have been too much like fun otherwise, you know?
Right. And so I'm like, you know, I'm lost throughout the entire thing. But it was actually Aviנו. They sang at this Chabad, and you know, you've heard a tune before and you just don't remember the words. That is what I felt with Aviנו. Is that it was a familiar tune and I couldn't quite remember where I heard it. I was like, okay, that's weird. I'll come back next week. You know, it's just the fact that I recognized something. I was like, all right, I'll come back again. Next week was Purim, so that was a nice introduction.
Oh, that's a good week to come back. Yeah.
But no, I kept coming and I enjoyed it, and I got along with the community great. I love everybody there. Absolutely amazing group of people there in Southern New Hampshire. But you know, conversion wasn't on my mind. That was not something I was considering. It was just I like hanging out here, and I like these people. It wasn't actually until Tisha B'Av. So I started just before the Shabbos before Purim, and then it was Tisha B'Av. They had mincha, and I had never seen tefillin before because I was only going on Saturday mornings.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But I heard, okay, it's this holiday. It's about the destruction of the temples. I've got time between classes. I forget if it was a Wednesday or Thursday, but whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I'll go. I've got time. And so I walk in and everybody's putting on these black boxes. And I've never seen these things before. And I just asked my dad, hey, what are these? Oh, they're tefillin. We put them on when we pray. Okay. Which I'm confused because I've been coming for months. I've never seen these things. What are you talking about? I didn't know that you don't put them on Shabbos. So I go up to the rabbi and was like, hey, could I put those on? He said, no, sorry, you can't. Okay. Could I put them on and just not say the blessing, right? I'm not Jewish. I'm not obligated. I just don't say the blessing on it. He said, no, sorry, you can't. Okay. And then I'm like, there's a plastic pair that you let your 6-year-old play with. Could I put those on? And he said, no, please sit down.
Wow. Okay.
And so I go to my seat and I open the siddur. And at this point, I could read a little bit of Hebrew. But when I open the siddur, I can't even see the page in front of my face. I'm starting to cry. There's snot already running down my face. I'm starting to sweat. I'm shaking. Like I'm losing my mind. And, you know, I start to sob a little bit. I just close the book and walk out so I don't make a scene. I sit there on this park bench on the University of New Hampshire campus. And for 10 or 15 minutes, I'm just bawling my eyes out. It takes maybe 10 or 15 minutes to finally pull myself together. And the only thing I can think is like, it's not a human reaction. It's not, you know, it's not normal to desire so strongly to want to do something you've literally never even seen before. To do something you've never, the word tefillin, maybe I had heard once just being around the synagogue, but like there was no reason for me to react like this. And so it was the next day that I went and started talking to the rabbi about conversion. And of course, he has to say no. But still,
a lot of no's you heard.
A lot of no's. It's funny when we first met with the Beis Din, they asked me, you know, what brought you here? And I told that story. And as we leave, my rabbi guy from the Chabad, he's like, that was like a 30-second interaction. Like, he's like, this was nothing to, I didn't even think of it. And I was like, no, that was the pivotal moment that, you know, changed the trajectory of my life.
We don't even realize what these small moments mean to people.
Oh, really? Yeah. Because who knows, if he had let me put on those little plastic ones, maybe I would have been satisfied with that and I never would have cared anymore. Like, I don't know what would have happened. It was that Tisha B'Av during Mincha that I said, no, I need to do this. I need to join this. And along with that, came tzitzit and came a kippah and came kashrut and came...
And now, all the accessories.
Right. And so, it was, and every step of the way, I've been excited to, like, I was annoying the heck out of the Beis Din for quite a while, saying, can I put on tzitzit? Can I put on tzitzit? Can I put on tzitzit?
Gosh.
Until eventually, I think they got tired of me. I'm like, fine, just do it, man.
Just do it. Just stop asking.
Right.
So, wow. So you decided that you wanted to convert after that beautiful, like, soul awakening moment.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I think it's so important just that you mentioned that it was an emotional thing because our emotional experience is so spiritually charged. Right. I think that's so important. I'm like, not everybody's so in touch with that. So I love hearing it. I think we can lean into that a little bit, like for all of us in our lives.
Well, so then we can say emotionally, beforehand, like, I don't know, sad stories or horror movies or whatever, I never had a big reaction to. Like, I was not a crier. And I don't know if I wasn't in touch with this half of myself or what. I don't know exactly what the thing was. But now, like, I don't know, my little sister sends me a video of this thing she did with the local theater troupe, and I'm starting to tear up. Oh. Yeah, like, because I'm like, oh, look at her, isn't this amazing? Look at whatever. Like, there was absolutely a complete shift in how I interact with the world around me.
I'd like to think when I'm talking about growth for myself, like that we're just developing sensitivities where we didn't have them before.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm hearing. Like, now you have this incredible opportunity to experience more of the world, by being more attuned to yourself.
Absolutely.
That rabbi from New Hampshire is the one who you went to the Beis Din with?
Yeah. When I first asked him, he simply said, I don't do that. Like, no, wow. I don't do that. Which used to be true. Because I'm the first person who's gone through this process.
Wow.
With. I guess he had told me there was one previous student who had asked about it, and he had told him I don't do it. And so the guy actually moved to Israel and then converted in Israel.
No way. Wow.
So there was one previous student who had asked him about it. But I'm the first person that he has, like, gone through this whole process with.
Did you share how that happened? Like, how you were able to change his mind a little bit?
Oh, I annoyed him. That was
like, sensing a theme. You know what you want. You go for it.
Well, because he told me no the day after Tisha B'Av. And then it was okay, but I came back next shows, and then I came the next, and then I came the next. Right. And it was maybe, I don't remember exactly when I asked the second time. And of course he said no, but he said, listen, go buy a copy of Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, read through the entire thing, and hopefully that'll scare you off.
Hopefully that'll do it.
You go through it, and it's all these rules. Put on your right shoe, then put on your left shoe, tie your left shoe, tie your right shoe. Like, all these ridiculous little details. And he was hoping it would scare me off, and it didn't work.
It didn't work.
That following summer, he put on the annual New Hampshire Jewish Festival. And it's quite big, like 500, 600 attendants. Like,
wow, that is...
and they've had, which for New Hampshire's enormous.
That's half of New Hampshire, yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's I think they're coming up on their fourth year now, and it's been wildly successful. It was at this festival, Rabbi Slavititsky in New Hampshire. His father is Rabbi Shabtai Slavititsky, the head shliach of Belgium. And so he's a very, very well-respected Rav in Europe, particularly Belgium, but in Europe kind of as a whole. And so he came all the way from Belgium to see how this festival was going to go. And then he visited his other kids in the States as well. Don't come for one day. But he and his wife literally physically cornered me in the shul. And, Rabbi Slavititsky is standing, on my left, and his wife is standing on my right. And for about 10 minutes, they're both going at me. You don't need to convert. You can be a good person without converting. You can go to heaven without converting. Like, you have 7 commandments. We have 613. You'd be an idiot to convert. What's wrong with you? Remember the Holodomor. Remember the Holocaust. Remember the pogroms. Remember this. Remember. And for about 10 minutes. At one point, Rabbi Shabtai Slavatitsky, his English isn't amazing. So at one point he slipped into Yiddish, but but his wife, her English was very good. And so I still got it. I still got the idea.
I don't even think you needed words at that point. I'm sure the tone was clear.
Right. I knew what was going on.
Okay.
But at the end of it, he says, "You still want to be Jewish?" Yeah. He says, "What do you want your Hebrew name to be?" And so actually I am going to be, hopefully soon, I'm going to be taking, Aaron Mordechai, after Aaron Feuerstein, who had helped my grandmother. And I had reached out to the family. I felt I needed to ask them. I couldn't just take it without talking to the family. But now I know the family, and it's really fantastic to have made this connection.
Names have meaning in Judaism. They do. Of course. And they are grounding, and like all the beautiful parts of community, like Americans should go to church, things like that. Any little bit of grounding that we can put in our lives and is amazing. And I think Judaism gives so much of that. Yeah, it's our name, it's our family, it's our tradition. There's so many aspects of like identity that we get to really incorporate. Absolutely. Do you find that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that, what are you doing every Saturday is always answered. Like, right. Just my most recent meeting with the Beis Din, right? I mentioned which yeshiva I went to, spent about 4 months in yeshiva. They said, "Oh, well, who did you stay by?" I said, "Oh, I stayed by so-and-so." And one of the rabbis go, "Oh, you mean this family?" I'm like, "Yeah, exactly. Over on Lincoln Street." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I know them."
Do geography.
Right, exactly. And
that's it. You're in. You have to do geography.
You're right. And it's just really amazing. Growing up in New Hampshire, like I said, I had the town of like 700 people. So there in that town, you knew everybody, or you knew everybody's parents. Like, there was some connection to everybody. But then once you leave that little teeny tiny town, well, then you have nothing. I don't know. Right. You go to the university, nobody. And it's not just the university. I mean, like, even just the secular community in Boston. How many people do you think talk to their neighbors?
Right.
Nobody talks to their neighbors. Yeah. And you could live next to this person for 20 years and never once exchange a word. And it's true. And so, but then you get into this Jewish community that's worldwide, and everybody knows everybody. It's really amazing.
So you finally got into the Beis Din and you started that process. And how long has that been taking you? How has that looked for you?
Yeah. So I was just studying with my rabbi for about a year until I convinced him, and then we were confident enough to get a hold of the Beis Din. It's been just over 2 years now. I think here in Boston, the average for men is between 2 and 2.5.
I've heard longer. I've heard longer.
Well, no, there's some people that take a little bit shorter, and then there's some people that take longer. Depends on people's personal situations.
But also, you came after already starting to learn, which I think not everybody does. Some people have to learn Hebrew. They have to learn about going to shul. They have to really
right. And I mean, I can read Hebrew at this point. I can't speak it.
Which is, I don't know that they expect that from you, do they?
No, they don't. I mean, they don't even expect me to be fluent in Hebrew. They expect me to be able to open the siddur, say the prayer in Hebrew, and then understand it later by reading the English half. At least that's what's been expected of me. Who knows? Somebody else they might have. It's 3 rabbis. It's those 3 rabbis' opinions. So that's what they've expected of me. The Hebrew has been that's a difficult language to learn.
It is difficult.
Well, at least compared,
it's very different from English.
Right. I think that's what the difficulty is. Yiddish, I've actually picked up just a bit from being around people that use
like when I said to Chachi. They know good word. And I just want to say, I didn't say it takes longer to scare you. I mean to say that good for you that's the average that you're working with, because I know people who were timid, back, forth. You know what you want. You're there. You're doing great.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I've had the privilege and the opportunity to not be forced to do something else. Right.
Right.
I know people that due to career or due to education or due to family
and traveling,
whatever the thing was, they were like seriously learning for a year and then had to step away from it. And then take the president of Argentina, Javier Milei. Sorry.
Yeah, he's been making the news. Yeah, he's been making the news.
Well, he was converting, also with a Chabad rabbi.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he was in the conversion process. But then when he won the presidency there in Argentina, they said, "Listen, we're not doing this while you're president. Like, we'll wait until you're done." Okay. And so, there's circumstances where, good luck being Shomer Shabbos when you're the president. Like, good luck.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so they said, "Listen, we'll wait until you're done." But actually, he was in the conversion process, and I guess you could argue that he still is. He's just going to wait until after he's done the presidency. Actually, it made big news as soon as he won the presidency. He went to the Ohel of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That made big news as well.
Yeah, he's been very openly supportive, which has been a little bit brave for a lot of people in politics now. So
I've heard that they have a kosher McDonald's in Buenos Aires. So, I mean...
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently.
We should go check it out. I know. But this is amazing. So just sitting at the Shabbos table, anything you say is like, I think it was Nissim Black that said, actually, like, he came to shul and he saw people just sitting around doing their thing, learning that. And he's like, "What do you mean that you're just sitting around? Don't you know what you have?" And somebody must have told him, or he came to the realization that, like, people who journey for what some of us were born with, bring the fire, the inspiration, the passion. That's like infuses Judaism with that excitement of freshness. And obviously the solid, consistent, meaningful, powerful element of like those who have been Jewish is powerful as well. But it really is true, because as someone who was raised with things like the Jewish geography, I don't even think of it as such a fabulous asset. It's just like a reality. And then you look back and you're like, we are connected at all times to people. Oh, yeah. Anywhere I go, I know that there's going to be someone, somehow, somewhere. And that is really beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, even just when I was going to the yeshiva, I took a bus down to New York City, but the bus left from Portland, Maine. So I just called up the Chabad of Portland and was like, "Hey, I need a place to stay." Like, fantastic. And it's... And
you're from the Chabad in every way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, I went to a Chabad yeshiva, and that's my origin point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's still just amazing that, look, I called up a guy I've literally never met before and said, "Hey, I need a place to stay." He's like, "Fantastic, I got you. Like, don't worry about it." That's something that simply doesn't exist. Outside of this community.
Did you share that with your family, that this is part of your new reality?
Oh, that is the point where, so my mother is incredibly supportive, but she's like, "This is the point where you people are insane." Right. Like there's a good friend of mine, Tova Kahn, and I literally, when I met her and her husband, we talked for like 15 minutes, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're staying by us on Shabbos." Yeah. And my mom's like, "Wait a minute, you've talked to these people for 15 minutes and you're going and staying in their house? What's wrong with you?" Yeah. Like, or they're allowing you in their house. You've talked to each other for 15 minutes. What's wrong with these people?
And it's so normal. Like,
yeah, of course.
I mean, there was a point where our family was away for the summer.
Right.
And we heard that there was a family that, I don't know if there was construction going on in their house for whatever reason. They lived somewhere in Massachusetts, but they needed a place to stay for a week or two.
Yeah.
And it was a Jewish family that I'd never met.
Sure.
And I looked at Ellie, my husband, and I said, "I don't know, this family needs a place to stay. We're not there.
Right.
I don't know, like, what do you think?" And looking back, even friends of ours thought we were crazy. I just basically put sticky notes, meat, dairy, meat, dairy, meat, dairy. Like, that was what I was concerned about.
Sure, right. Just think, who knows, which drawer is which, unless it's your house. Right.
We hadn't met this couple till years later, basically.
Okay.
Or like now we're friendly with them, but we let them live in our house. And you know something? We came back home to a clean, organized house with little gifts for all my kids sitting on the table.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I just said, maybe it was crazy. I will put it out there. That might have been a little nutty. However, it was such an incredible feeling of Mikam Klei Yisrael. Who else is like us in this way? I knew I could trust them. I felt at peace with allowing them to be in our home. And it worked out beautifully, thank God. Don't know I would do that again. for other reasons. But that's reality of being part of the Jewish nation and having that element of trust.
Yeah, it's something that, is just worthy of endless praise. That some way, somehow, over 3,000 years, the community still exists. Go name any other people group that has, existed for over 3,000 years. It's going to be a tough sell.
Yeah, I know that we're talking for a long time and I don't even want it to end, but I do want to ask if anything changed after October 7th for you, for your family, for your friends, with how you you look very obviously of the Jewish faith. Right?
Yeah. And I mean, as part of my master's degree, I was teaching at the university as well. And so there were, I guess the only thing that changed on my end was sort of those remember X, remember Y, remember Z, right? Those suddenly became a lot more serious. When it was remember the pogroms, I'm like, oh yeah, the pogroms of 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Well, hold on. No, it's not 100 years ago. It's this is still a very real situation. And so it was just taking those sorts of thoughts a lot more seriously than I had before. Of course, it didn't change my desire to be Jewish. It was just okay, this is something that I actually need to be aware of. It's not just a historical thing of the past. And then, I mean, in the university, I know that I have several colleagues that are they refuse to be called Iranian. They are Persians. They refuse to be called Iranians. I have nothing to do with it.
Right.
I've got a few colleagues that they just said, "Hey, listen, sorry, sorry that this is happening to even though I'm not actually Jewish, in their eyes, it's not a difference there. They're like, hey, sorry this is happening to your group. Or I've got a professor that I'm good friends with who's Ukrainian. And, when Ukraine was invaded, I had reached out and said, just something along the lines of, hey, man, I don't know what's going on in your life and your family, but I hope everything's okay, yada, yada. And so when October 7th came around, he did the exact same thing. He was like, hey, listen, I've had, he said, I don't know if you have family in Israel. I don't know what your situation is, but my family's currently going through the same thing, man. Wow. And so he reached out and was very supportive as well.
I wanted to just end with what brought you to Boston? And then one last question after that.
Yeah, sure. So what brought me to Boston was after I'd been learning for a while. Usually they give you a list of stuff, learn this, read this, yada, yada, yada. And the instruction they gave me 2 meetings ago was find a minyan. And so that entailed, it's pretty much impossible. It's very, very difficult in New Hampshire to get a consistent minyan, and almost impossible during the week. And so that meant, okay, I got to move to Boston. Boston was still close to my university, still close to my family. Obviously, I'm going to the Boston-based inn, and so it's close to them as well. And so that was the obvious choice.
Yeah, I'm we have to have you back after what's it called? We have to have you back after to celebrate.
Yeah. So
we can have a party. How does that work?
Well, I think it just varies individual to individual. But the last time I met with them, I just met with them on yesterday. And
you met with them yesterday.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. It feels forever ago. Just met with them yesterday, and they gave me there's a final test. They've given me the
written test.
They've given me the written test.
I remember studying with a friend years ago for her, and she's asked this question. We're like, we failed. We don't know. We will ask you the questions.
Right. Yeah. No, they've given me the written test.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's you take it home. But
okay.
They
don't want to do it under pressure. I don't understand.
But because if you don't know the answer, they might give you the opportunity of go find it.
Oh, okay. I love that.
So they actually characterize it more yes, it's called an exam, but think of it more like a study guide. And when we left, my rabbi told me, he had said along the lines of, if you really buckle down, it should be maybe a month or 2. So
you're at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, I think everyone knows you're at the end. They're just, at this point,
the fact that every shul I walk into tries to offer me an aliyah, I think
you're like, it's time, Rabbi. Emir Hashem. I know we didn't get this on the recording, but I remember when you came and it's you're like, I can't do the mazel, but we had 3 men. I remember that.
Right.
But I think that it's also like, we grew up in a very, very religious, I don't know if I should press record with it, but I grew up in a very religious community where like we had this experience of don't talk to someone about their past because that's inflicting pain or embarrassment.
Right. Well, I know, I'm sure that some people that are, and maybe on context, being, reminded of, oh, well, you're a convert. It might depend on context. Like if it's a, I don't know, you go on a date and then she says, oh, but he's a convert. It's like,
oh, like derogatory. Okay.
Right. Like such a thing hasn't happened to you. But I'm just saying, like, if something like that happens, then it'd be like, okay, come on, guys. Like, but I mean, at least for me, no, I'm more than happy to. I know, I get the choice of whether I call myself Ben Avraham or, Ben Avraham Avinu. I'm choosing Avinu. Because like I'm glad that I'm a convert. Like, look, I went through all this, I didn't go through all this for nothing. Give me the,
exactly. No, credit where credit is due. I think that's earned. And I also think that the journey is being given the credit it deserves. And I think that maybe that wasn't something that the boomers were. It was all productivity and,
maybe I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people like were very like, end result focused, which is always a good guide, but the journey is just as important. The journey is, if anything, more inspiring and more investment in the end goal.
Well, maybe like if I think back 300, 400 years, most of the, any converts would have been, usually very poor, water carriers, wood choppers, those sorts of things. And so like they would have been relatively low status in the shtetl, right? Where, the shochet or the butchers or whatever, they would have been much more established. I guess it's not impossible for a ger to have done that, but it would have been very unlikely. Those people usually would have been established for quite a while. So the high status people would have been long lineages where the convert would have been the low status people. And so that might be why, like, reminding somebody that they were a convert historically has been like a bad thing, because it would have also been saying like, hey, you're a low status person, because just generally that's just how it would have worked. Where, now people work all over the place, right? Like it's not such a divide in livelihoods. And so I think that might be part of the reason why it's like much more, people are much more open about the fact that they're a convert, like myself, like Misa Black. Somebody, I'm not famous, but there's several, famous people that are very, very open about the fact that they've converted.
And I think it does something for the clout, for, Jewish people as a unit to connect over, to be reminded of what we're about, but also just to see the value that each person brings, each neshama that brings to Klal Yisrael.
Well, I think there's also a point of just, some people have said to me like, hey, if I wasn't born Jewish, I never would have picked it.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, but I did. And here's why I picked it.
Yeah.
And so, even just that little bit could be like, oh, okay, I guess I could appreciate this, or I could appreciate that. Some people look at it as just, oh, there's this big long list of rules I have to follow. And I'm thinking, you get to follow them. You get to light Shabbos candles. You get to put on tefillin. It's wow, isn't that amazing that you get to do these things? Yeah. When I put on tefillin, I'm like, hey, look, I get to hug the creator of the universe, right? I'm getting a physical connection to a non-physical God. That's insane.
That is insane. I don't think I've ever thought of it that way. Wow. Yeah. And Chabad also talks a lot about bringing the spiritual to our world, bringing Hashem to this world. Right. So that's, wow. Okay, I'm connecting dots. See? It's happening in real time right now. But wow, it's always amazing to hear what brings people here. And the last thing I would love to hear from you is regarding your journey. Like, what's been something that's like helpful, or something that you would impart to people, the Jewish people in general, or people in the world in general, something meaningful about your experience?
Something meaningful about my experience. I'm actually going to go right to Pirkei Avos. I believe it's chapter 4, but don't quote me on that. Ben Zoma says, "Who is considered wise is he who learns from all men, from all people." actually the Daf Yomi from a couple of days ago, there was a rabbi who was referred to simply as Ben Yochanan. He wasn't referred to by his actual name. And they ask, why was he referred to as the name of his father instead of his own name? They said, well, he was referred to by the name of his father because when he gave this ruling, he was still a student. So we go back to Pirkei Avos. Ben Zoma says, who is wise is he who learns from all men. For forever, he will be known as Ben Zoma. He will be known as the student. And that is something that we should take. We should take that every minute, every person, every ounce of our ability should be towards understanding the people in the world around us. In the merit of Ben Zoma.
Wow, I love that. I love that. That's such a humbling, but beautiful way to look at things. I love it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sitting and
amazing. Yeah, glad to
allowing me the privilege of hearing your story and allowing me the privilege of trying new things.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, hopefully then you should have much hatzlacha with your efforts here, and hopefully everything goes up and up.
Amen. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. I have to go back to doing my hishtadlus of feeding you tonight because you're gonna have no food. No, I'm joking.